Hello, everyone. and Welcome back to another session in the Bold Strokes Books Winter Bookathon. My name is Carsen Taite, and I'm here with you on the high stakes suspense panel. And we have a raft of wonderful suspense authors. So without further ado, I'd like to have everybody give a little introduction. And I'm going to start with Charlotte Greene.
Hi everybody, I'm Charlotte Greene. I write both contemporary lesbian romance novels and lesbian romantic suspense thrillers. My romantic suspense novels usually have supernatural or horror elements. My December release, From the Woods, is my ninth published novel with Bold Strokes, and it's about a group of lesbian friends backpacking in an isolated wilderness. Things get creepy and eventually they have to fight to stay alive in order to make it back home.
Awesome. All right. J. Marshall Freeman.
Hi there. I am J. Marshall Freeman, and I write science fiction and fantasy. This is my novel that just came out in December, The Dubious Gift of Dragon Blood, which is my first professionally published novel and my first novel with Bold Strokes. And it is fantasy about a 16-year-old kid from Earth who finds out he has a link to the realm of fire where the dragons live. And he goes there thinking it'll be a swell getaway, and it turns out to be a much more dangerous and fascinating and romantic adventure than he could have imagined.
And there are cat soldiers, and that alone is a selling point to me. Genevieve McCluer, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Genevieve McCluer. I'm a fantasy and romance author. My most recent book is Thor, Daughter of Asgard. It's a poly urban fantasy story about some people who find out that they're the reincarnations of Norse gods. It has some suspense elements, but for suspense, there'd be more my prior book, Olivia, which is about a vampire with PTSD.
JD Wilburn.
Hello. I'm JD. I have a book coming out in February. It will be my first published work and my first work with Bold Strokes. It's called, I don't fucking know. I don't know. My mind just went blank. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Anyway, I'll bring it up later.
It's a far better thing.
Thank you, Carsen. I appreciate that. Oh God, the coffee's not doing its job. My book is called A Far Better Thing. It's about a detective who begins investigating one of the biggest motorcycle clubs in the world, gun safe decoration, and ends up working with the gang because they find out that there's somebody running a shadow operation on both sides of the thin blue line.
Excellent. Who's left? Let me see. She needs no introduction, but here she is, Vali.
Yeah, I think JD's memory has to do with that sign in the background. Why?
In my defense, I only put like maybe 3/4 of those corks out there.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Vali. I'm not sure what number this is, but next month on February the 1st, it is the 7th, that I do know, in the 7th in the Devil series. I don't have it yet, so I put it on my,
Ooh, that's nice.
So the Devil Incarnate. I write a slew of different things, from romance where no one dies to the Devil series and some other ones where a lot of people die. So it's a mixed bag.
Well, there went the suspense, you know. It says devil on it. There are people going to die. So when I was preparing for this panel, I looked up a bunch of different definitions of suspense, and I settled on one for us to use, and that is the quality of in a work of fiction that arouses, and that's probably why I chose it, because it had the word arouses, excited expectation or uncertainty about what may happen. And so it's hard. I write suspense, and it's hard when you're on a panel about suspense to talk about your book sometimes, because you don't want to give too much away because you'll spoil it. But without any spoilers, if you could just kind of characterize the suspense element of your story. And Genevieve, if you want to use both books, that's fine too, since one might be more heavily suspenseful than the other. But let's just start where we started before. Charlotte, why don't you tackle that?
I guess what I try and do in From the Woods is kind of gradually build up dread. That's what I kind of rely on with most of my suspense novels. Is at first it seems like this sort of creepy, and then it gets more and more real. So I attempt to build on, what came before it, which is like a little bit worse and a little bit worse than that, etc. So yeah, I think that's how I try and build it, is that I guess it just goes from being creepy to dreadful.
Well, I read, I have not read this one yet, but I read, and I'm terrible with titles too, JD. Is it Legacy? The Legacy?
Yeah, Legacy was the one before that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, like things happen, they could be, just write them. I hear a noise, it's not, it's like at my house, I hear a noise. It's got to be something really creepy to get me out of bed. So yeah, it's like you just start planning these little things and then escalate them.
Yeah.
I think you do a really good job at that.
Thanks.
So J. Marshall, tell us, like, what's the crux of the suspense element? I know, I'm sure being a kid and suddenly finding out you're part of the realm of fire.
Yeah, and when Crispin is off to the realm of fire, he doesn't suspect all the things that he's going to find. He knows he's got a scary, perhaps, mission where he might have to mate with the Dragon Queen, which is a surprise to a 16-year-old gay boy, in order to make sure that the line of dragons goes on. So that's enough on his mind. But when he gets there, he discovers that there's a lot of politics going on, and some of it is revolving around this boy he's in love with. And I kind of have a double stream happening where we think, okay, this is the main plot, and this is why it's getting tenser and tenser. But there's also a second plot that suddenly lands like a meteor, and you realize that actually there's a huge war that's about to happen, and also just a larger plot about what's going to happen when the realms return to Earth, and what is the larger plot. So it's it's almost like there's a medium suspense and then a meteor hit suspense.
So double your fun. So Genevieve, you said Thor doesn't have a huge suspense element, but I imagine, finding out you've been reincarnated as you're a reincarnated Norse god.
Yeah. The main way for Thor that I build any suspense is using dramatic irony. One of the main characters is lying and working for the villain, and the reader knows that from very early on, whereas the main characters don't find out until a good while later. Whereas for Olivia, the main way I build suspense is more from hiding information. There's a good deal of dealing with her her PTSD flashbacks, mostly through her dreams, and we don't really have clarified the main person who had caused that until much later on with a very big reveal.
That's awesome. I love when you get a big payoff at the end, or somewhere in there. Okay, JD, obviously, I'm infiltrating a motorcycle gang. Talk to us about how you build that suspense.
So there's a few things that are going on that are suspenseful in my book. Honestly, the main one isn't even having to do with the crimes going on. It's really the moralistic suspense, because you have a police officer that's described in the book as a cop's cop. She's by the book. The thin blue line is everything. And because it is a romance, obviously she begins to develop feelings for the second in command of this 1%er club, she's a criminal, and she begins to really question herself and her own morals, as does my other character, Cass, who is the oh my God, I can't talk, who is the criminal. But aside from that, you have, as I stated earlier, somebody who's working both sides and it's not even a double cross because there's 3 main players in the book, and this person is actually working for all 3 sides to his own gain. And so Cass is not only trying to stay away from Bo, who's the officer, to save her own life, but she's trying to get closer to her because she has to figure out what's going on in her own organization while stopping the detective from finding out what's going on. So there's just a whole bunch of different elements that are going on, and you and there's a line that I love, that one of the side characters says, and it says, "What you've got right now is a whole bunch of screws, and that's great for holding everything together, but I need something concrete if I'm going to build a bridge for the DA to walk on." And the entire story, that's all the reader gets, is little snippets of the big picture. And I purposely pull my characters in every direction that I possibly can.
So you've got a little more. So Genevieve's story was, the reader might know some secrets and then the characters find out, but yours is the characters are finding out. So that's a great juxtaposition there. Allie Valley. So here's I want you to take a little different spin on that question, because which devil book is this? The Devil Incarnate is what?
Number 7.
Number
it's
7.
Number 8, but we have the prequel. So that makes it 8. But in the continuous storyline, this is number 7.
So what I'm always amazed with is when I pick one up and read it, it's like I just left the other one. It's like I hate watching a TV series where I go back to it and it's like years have passed, but people are still pregnant, and but how do you keep the suspense element fresh in a long-running series like that?
Well, one of the things is that since this is book number 7 and was supposed to be really the last of the series, but I now have introduced the Russian mob, so that's not going to be possible. But I think one of the reasons that I love writing Kane, not just because, like I've always said, you're really not supposed to be rooting for Kane, but Kane is, but she's playing both sides. So you have enemies who want to take you down because of what you have, and then you also have to play cat and mouse with the FBI and with the New Orleans Police Department. So I just love writing Kane because it's a very she's very much of a tactician. She tries to figure out, she's always like 4 or 5 steps ahead, but sometimes you throw a wrench in there and it just can't be 4 or 5 steps ahead. She always talks about Napoleon. Napoleon lost his war, not because he wasn't a great tactician, it was just that he spread himself too thin. So it had to do with supply line more than anything else, that somebody else was better than him. So she mentions that in a couple of the different books, but I think it's just that, like I said, when you have to figure out, I don't want to go to jail, but then also figure out I don't want to die with these other people, it kind of keeps the books, I think, very fresh. And like I said, and she has very inventive ways of killing people. So
I feel like you're just trying these all out in your book.
Yeah, really.
Don't answer that. Okay, so let's talk about how character and plot intersect, because I've heard people say they start with the characters and then go from there for their story. They start with a plot idea and fill in characters. When you're writing suspense, do one of those necessarily have to come first, or does one of those necessarily naturally come first for you? And Charlotte, you probably figured out I was going to come back to you next.
I feel like for me, it's almost always plot first. At least, and I guess what they call it pantser. So I don't always have the whole thing planned out, but I'll have the kernel of the idea, and then I'll think about who I want to populate it with. With From the Woods, I knew I wanted to have a bully, because I was just interested in including that. And when I was talking with via email, my editor, Shelley Rasher, we one of the things she mentioned was that it's just kind of an unusual thing to have a jerk, right? And so my main characters always tend to be kind of like me, like a little bit shy, a little bit reserved, but then the kind of secondary characters can be extreme. And so her best friend is a real, bitch, basically. And so I wanted to see what that would happen inside this terrifying situation. Would the jerk become, stay a jerk, or would she
Pull together,
and would the, the shy, follower become the leader? So, but I don't know that when I was thinking about the idea that I thought about the characters that much at all. So I feel like for me, it's always second.
Okay, good answer. Jonathan?
I think I can't write a story unless I'm really committed to the character. So the main character I have to feel him. And then, and it's kind of a total interlocking of character and plot. So it has to be that character going through that story. But secondary characters can be like, that obstacle. There's this religious character and he's going to be an obstacle. That's as much as I know about him going in. And that's fine. But I need to be able to be walking with the main character and know who he is. I have a bunch of books that are just sitting there orphaned because I can't feel my way in through a character yet. Yeah.
So you may have a bunch of plots at your house.
That would be a good idea for a plot, but until I find the feeling to get me into it. And with suspense, it's like anything else. Payoffs in suspense have to also be payoffs of character. So unless it's character driven, unless that solves something in the character's journey, this moment when the suspense pays off, then it's not worth it to me.
So Allie, I'm going to jump to you next. See, I'm totally going off. Just because I think I'd like you to riff on that, because I noticed someone in the chat roll just said Cain Casey is such an intriguing character. And I know you've written other suspense novels that don't have to do with Cain, but just, just riffing off that, did you start with the character first or the plot, or does it vary?
It varies. Like in Double Cross, I actually came up with the character first. I thought that would be kind of intriguing, that if you are hired to kill someone and then that's who ends up being your love interest in the book, I thought that might be interesting. And then also, so that was more character driven. Then if you go to the Calling series, which is Calling the Dead and Answering the Call, that one actually came about because, it's been a while now, but Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005. And when your house gets full of water and you spend all these months, tearing out stuff and throwing away all your loved possessions onto the street, you eventually either have to take a vacation or you have to crack. And like I've said before, a lot of people, when they saw Katrina, they thought it was very isolated area. And it's kind of like what happened this year in Lake Charles. Until you actually drive through it, that flooding and the stuff that happened was miles and miles and miles. You're looking at a lot of miles. So we went to, I was actually going to Florida for the beach for just a couple of days, like take a long weekend, just so I'd put my hammer down for a little while. And I think in every city there's that car row, where like the Mercedes dealer, the GMC, they're all, and every single car in the parking lot was still there, but they were all gray. Like the windows were gray, the cars were gray. It was because they were under 20 feet of water and they got covered in this slime stuff. Wow. But then beyond that, it was New Orleans East is a very, not a real mix, but it was like higher into middle class African-American neighborhoods. And there was no one there. Like no one. So I'm, sitting next to Carolyn and she's looking out the window thinking about like, oh my God, all these people have lost their homes, which is probably what the normal person would think. I, on the other hand, was thinking, if you were a serial killer, kill someone here, and you don't even have to gag them because, that, so then she looked at me all the way to Florida like, what is wrong with you? So that one came more about is the fact that
was the plot first.
Exactly. So it's a mixed bag. It just depends on what pops into my very twisted little brain.
So how about you, Genevieve? You remember the question?
I think so. For me, it would always be character first. Like I can come up with the idea pretty much either way, but characters just always are the most important part. I plan rather extensively, but if my characters have a better idea, that's just what's going to happen.
Gotcha. That makes sense. JD?
I have to say almost 100% my plot comes first. The characters kind of develop as the story goes along. And the direct sequel to A Far Better Thing, which I'm working on both books that are going to come after it. And I'm not sure which one's going to end up done first, but in the direct sequel, it's pretty much it's all the same characters for the most part. There is a different set of main characters, but it's all the same people. Whereas in the other book, in the Galveston Island Chronicles, the main characters from those two books are more tertiary characters. They just pop in and out. But I know exactly what the plot is. I know who most of the characters are, and I have no clue who my villain is. I know, like, as an entity who he is, no clue who he's going to turn out to be. So I'm very interested to see what happens with this because I have no clue where it's going to go. I have no idea.
We'll find out right along with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Genevieve, I want to go back to you for just a minute because I was thinking after you talked that, well, you're writing this book, Thor, and there's already this whole, like, I mean, obviously a mythology and the construct around that. So did you stay within that? I mean, how, or how was that more challenging because you were already faced with the...
Well, it depended a lot. The characters are primarily reincarnations of the gods. So I did some of them where they very much kept close to the original personalities, and some where they're like the exact opposite with, bits and pieces still in there. Like Hannah, the main character, who is Thor and doesn't like fighting.
You do that a lot, the vampire with PTSD.
I suppose I do. And the first book, Wendigo that doesn't eat people. Yeah, I guess I do that a lot.
All right, so just tossing this question out, and whoever wants to go first, just let me know. What's the most challenging aspect of creating suspense in your work?
Knowing how much, I'm sorry.
Oh, goodness gracious, J. Marshall. No, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'll be brief. Knowing how much to dole out, because you want, because when I got to the end of the second draft of Dubious Gift, I was like, you haven't set up that shock that's going to happen at all, and I think that's too much. I think the readers will be like, where'd that come from? But if I dole out this much, then it'll be satisfying without having given it away. But if I give out too much, then I've blown my
breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. JD?
And, I was actually going to say pretty much the exact same thing, is making sure that you're not giving out too much information in the beginning, that you have to dole it out evenly and equally. Which is sort of what's going to happen in that other book where I don't know who my bad guy is. Even if you have most of the information in the very beginning, you still have to make sure that you do have that one big surprise that you save to the end.
Good point. Go ahead, Genevieve.
I was also going to say about the same exact thing. But like for one thing that I was really thinking of now that we were getting into the nitty gritty of everyone saying the same thing, is that one thing that I've noticed is that particularly with having dishonest characters, even if you like explicitly say that there's a good chance that what they're saying isn't true, a lot of people will still just assume that they were telling the truth. So it's always hard to figure out how to dole that out without just making it explicit that they're lying, especially if a character can't know for sure that they're lying.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that a lot in the unreliable narrator books that came out. It's like you buy into it till you don't, and then how does the writer decide when to clue the reader in? Allie, how do you?
Well, like I said, in Calling the Dead, which is I think really kind of more suspenseful, I write in chapters about 120 pages. This is my chat. I have like 4 chapters when I'm done. And then, so I remember all my beta readers, and probably in the first 30 pages, they told me they knew who it was. It's like, well, it's a mystery and we know who it was. And then they believe that all the way until you don't believe that. So I actually like to put all the information out there, and then it's wrong. I'm lying. So,
well, and how in your Devil books do you keep that kind of element of, is Cain Casey is her empire ever going to crumble? Are the cops ever going to catch her? Or, I mean, how do you keep that fresh over that many books in a series?
Well, and one thing is, like in this the last book that before this one, she actually gave, one of the police officers, her parents were killed, by order of who she thought was Cain. So she went after. So sometimes when you're angry, you have a tendency to forget the rules, especially for someone who's supposed to be following. Cain doesn't follow any rules except her own. But if you're the FBI, you're not supposed to do that. I guess the world is changing because we see it on television every day that people who are supposed to be following the rules do not do that. So, but when you get angry enough, when it becomes personal, then, so in this case, she gave her the option once the girl figured out that it was not Cain and she figured out who it was, that if you compromise the people who are supposed to be catching you, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. I mean, once it happened, they went back to the sides they were supposed to be on, but it's still there, that it's in the back of her mind that she let me do something I'm really not supposed to be doing. And I didn't explicitly come out and say that she had done it, but in the Devil books, I think, because it's a cast of characters, that it's a lot. I actually read some comment the other day, and I think now that I have Victoria as an editor, she's like, it's a lot of characters, and it's like, but you got to kill a lot of people. You're not going to end up with one person. So we have to keep, now I have a character Bible for every book. And I think the Devil books, it just carries from, now I have a dead section and there's still a live section, but the whole thing is about 6 pages long. So it's always kind of an evolving thing for every new enemy that she has, brings a whole new slew of not just suspense, but danger to either get caught or to die. That somebody's always gunning for you. It just depends on what side of the law they're on.
Gotcha. Charlotte, how about you? What's the most challenging aspect of creating suspense in your work?
Since most of them are supernaturals, I have like 2 ghost stories, and then From the Woods is, I don't want to give it away, but I always want people to be wondering if it's all in the character's head, or if it's an actual supernatural thing, because I feel like especially in ghost stories, once you see it, it's not scary anymore, right?
Right.
The idea of it is scarier than seeing it. So I feel like that the longer I can drag that out, the better, because even if we know, because we've read the blurb, that it's a haunted house, I don't want the characters to know that. And I also don't know that any of us would immediately leap to ghosts, right? So I try and keep that, that pushing back. And then From the Woods, it's similar. You don't know if these are, crazy people or they're monsters or, and I don't, I try and put that reveal off as long as I can.
It makes me think that suspense is kind of like porn. It's like
When you
you're
see
building up and building up. It's so exciting, and then sometimes if you get there too fast,
put off the money shot. Exactly.
Yep, exactly.
The rules for
That's
comedy too.
So we have some questions from the audience, and suspense or thrillers, do you see a difference? If so, how? And because she is an English professor, I'm going to call on Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do. I feel like thriller has a different goal, right? Which is, it can be again, I would probably say mine are more thrillers than suspense. Maybe you can be put in suspense in order to be thrilled, but I feel like suspense is more on the mystery side, and thriller can kind of start to move into something more like action, I guess. I think that's how I would try and think about the difference. Suspense feels quieter to me somehow.
Or it definitely can be. It has that option.
Yeah, it has that option more.
Anyone else have an opinion?
I feel like when it comes to thriller versus suspense, I feel like, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they rhyme, but I feel like thriller is more of a killer vibe. Like if it's a thriller, somebody's going to die, and it's not so much you're trying to figure something out as much as it is you're trying to get away from something. Like
Right.
there's more of an aspect of danger in a thriller, I feel like.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Genevieve?
Well, I will voice a dissenting opinion then and say that if you Google suspense genre, you get the Wikipedia article for thriller. Thus, same thing, proven.
Thus spoke the wiki.
I feel like suspense is a technique, whereas thriller is a genre.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Suspense can be in all kinds of different books.
Jackie in
I
the
think that's
chat.
the point.
Yeah, Jackie in the chat said James Bond versus Alfred Hitchcock. I like that.
I like that too. Allie, you have any final words?
Yeah, no, I think she's right. I think it's, whether you die, like you ask yourself questions, can I really feed a person through a meat grinder? And
Jesus.
do I need to take your clothes off first? That would be the
Here the answer is yes. I'm scared. I'm not really scared.
Now I really want to know the answer to that. Can somebody actually go through a meat
We
grinder?
must go to the Google. So I like this question a lot. This is from the audience. ACOP, how much do you all think about using the classic cliffhanger ending to a chapter or book to intentionally increase the suspense for the reader? And how does that enter into your writing or editing process?
No, I've done that. I just switched editors not that long ago, and Vic's not a big fan of that. So I try not to do that. I think.
Well, wait, on a chapter or book level?
On like the end of a chapter. I've done it in a book and people hated me for it. So I've tried to avoid that.
Raise your hand if that's happened to you.
Don't do that, especially if you're not ready to write the sequel like right away. If you got to wait like 2-3 years and you get a lot of hate mail, believe me. But I take that from experience. But in this case, I think one of the things that she's trying to do is to replace the suspense ending of a chapter with more emotion.
Okay.
Which at first I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. But now I found, it's like, that's so cute. But in this case, it's, I found that it actually, even in suspense or in a case of thriller, however you want to define it, it actually makes the book a lot better. I have to give her kudos on that, you'll find not a softer Kane, but you'll find a much more in-depth Kane in this next book.
So you
Yeah,
get kind of a hook with the character as opposed to the plot.
correct.
The plot's going to keep moving forward, but now you're invested because you're
Yeah.
really in it with the
More
character.
of the
feeling
inner
it.
workings that maybe she's not psychotic. Well, maybe a little bit. She does have feelings. So,
Now,
Okay,
I can't think of
go
an
ahead.
example, but I've read about it because I'm terrible at remembering examples. But books where you have kind of two sets of characters or two sets of stories that are eventually going to come together, and you're really invested in one, and then they say, end it and go to the other one. And you're like, no! And then ideally, then by the time you get to the end of that, and they go back to the other one, you go, no! And that's a good kind of suspense. That's kind of fun. So that's a sort of cliffhangery, and you're playing with the audience's emotions there. They're
It's a
invested.
hook to turn the page. So, Genevieve.
I like the process. I like using cliffhangers somewhat, but if you overuse them especially, or just use them a bit too explicitly, it can be very manipulative and kind of take the reader out of the story rather than bring them in. So I think apparently what I do, just thinking back over my books, is try to limit it to like maybe just like one real cliffhanger ending a chapter per book, because I think I do that in both Thor and Olivia, ending with them having the gods show up and then ending that chapter there, and finding a body, or bodies actually, ending the chapter there in Olivia.
So, okay, I like that. I like that a lot. So, JD, how about you?
So I don't know what books you were talking about, Jay Marshall, but I know that the Black Dagger Brotherhood series is notorious for that, having two separate storylines in every single one of the books. And I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but I don't know. I'm kind of a little bit self-conscious after Allie said not to end your book on a cliffhanger now, because in my book, there's not so many chapter cliffhangers, but at the end of the book, there is a short drop and a sudden stop, and everything is out in the open, but absolutely nothing is tied off. And so you have no choice but to continue to the next book, because it's the end is where the suspense really comes in for me.
Oh, no, I didn't say I didn't like
I'm going
it,
to get death threats in the mail.
but I'm just telling you.
Well,
Get some emails like,
But
what
there's
the hell are
also
you
a
doing?
difference between somebody who just kind of drops a book off and doesn't have plans for a series too.
True.
Exactly.
True.
At
That's
least
why
it's coming.
I'm going back and forth so much between do I want to write the direct sequel next? Is that really what I want to put out, or do I just want to really like just push that torture through and not write it just yet?
All right,
Yeah.
all readers, you heard that. Read the book.
And write the sequel. My advice to you.
Seasoned advice there. Charlotte, how about you?
I definitely do it. I'm guilty of the chapter cliffhanger, and I'm thinking about it in every chapter. And I like it when people tell me, "Oh, couldn't put it down. I had to keep reading. You never gave me a spot to pause and relax." So.
No, I like that. I like that a lot.
My editor is fine with it, so I'm getting away with it, I guess.
Okay, so here's another audience question from Emily. How do you view the stakes for your novels? How much does there need to be violence or death, or at least the expectation of that? So that's a good question. We know your answer, Allie.
And violence sells.
So Genevieve, tell us about the stakes.
The stakes in Thor, well, I suppose the primary stakes would just be that somebody is manipulating almost the entirety of their lives behind the scene and planning on killing off some of them if they don't cooperate.
So it is a life or death kind of deal.
Yeah. like I said, there are definitely suspense elements in it. It's just a much more lighthearted story than Olivia.
Do you think there needs to be that high of a stakes for a suspense book?
Oh no, not at all. I would absolutely read a suspense story with low stakes. That sounds really interesting.
Jonathan?
I like high stakes, like high emotional stakes and high, not necessarily body count, but a consequence. Because my book starts off with the concept that there's been a prophecy that one of the 5 dragons of the realm of fire is going to die. And when Crispin gets there, there's a religious debate about whether to believe prophecy or not. But, you know, you have a pretty good idea that there is going to be a death of a dragon. It's because that's more interesting. You know that the book's going to go the more interesting route and give you that. So then we meet all 5 dragons and we're like, oh, okay, I don't want any of these to die. And then there's another set of more mortal stakes where there seems to be a creature lurking around that keeps threatening to kill Crispin and other people in the book. So yeah, I think the stakes have to be there for that kind of book. One wrong move and you're done.
Allie?
Yeah, there has to be a huge body count. Out there. No, I think I'm probably on some FBI watch list because I get a lot of emails about. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little sick and twisted as far as, I mean, at least that's what my partner thinks. But I get people who are upset that I didn't kill more people in the book when these books come out. So you have to kind of have some people survive, like I said, so that you can go on. Not the book just ends. It was just Kane making coffee in the morning. But yeah, no, I mean, killing people and trying to research it is because there's a little bit of research in it. And then sometimes I'll just ask Rad, like, would this kill you? You have, you know, a doctor that you can ask. But no, where that was really fun was in, let's put it a different way, not necessarily fun, but more interesting, was in Calling the Dead, because the more ritualistic killing, you know, now I'm just speaking as someone who watches IDTV all the time, because what's more fun than reality than, there's a lot of sick, twisted puppies out there. But I think in this case, it makes the story more interesting. At least, you know, I get to channel, I have to be nice in my job all the time. So Kane doesn't have that problem.
So Kane's your alter ego. I always read it as if it's you. Charlotte, high stakes, low stakes, suspense, can they be both?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to, I would have a real hard time killing off a character. And but secondary character, sure. It hasn't happened yet, but I think I would do that. And there's always bodily harm, and I like the threat of death, but
not the actual.
Yeah, I don't know that I can do that.
I think that's nice. I think there's always bodily harm should be like a tagline for someone.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a little more time, so I'm just going to kick this to something fun. What's your favorite suspense storyline of all time and why? And Jonathan, I'm going to start with you.
I'm bad with all time.
Well, it doesn't have to be. How about like that you've read recently?
Lately, or... Yeah, my favorite TV show in the last few years is Ozark.
Oh God, that gives me anxiety.
Yeah, well, exactly, because Ozark, the suspense is, well, it's terrible because it's this main character. One of the main characters is always like, okay, I can fix this. Yes, 10 people want to kill us, but if we just do this, then 20 people will want to kill us, but they have a better chance of getting out of it. And it just gets deeper and deeper into shit. You know, it's like, and that's the character's flaw, that he keeps thinking he can handle it and keeps going deeper. So the suspense never lets up in that show.
Yeah, you know, they always give you the ability to binge it, but I have to like get up and walk around after each episode and like shake it off.
And again, it's all about character. So
yeah, there you go. How about you, Genevieve?
Well, I was originally going to say The Maltese Falcon, but now that we've been talking about low stakes and suspense, it got me thinking of actually one of my favorite shows, The Booth at the End. has some of the lowest stakes you'll see in Suspense for the most part, except for one character. And it's just people sitting in a bar talking, or in a diner actually, talking just about basically a deal with the devil and what they're doing to accomplish it. And like there's literally one where it's a person sleeping around in order to get I think it was eventually to be able to get a kid, and just stuff like that, where it's super low stakes stuff that isn't really going to harm anyone, and just see if they'll actually follow through with it and what will happen.
So do you think our current climate lends itself more to people wanting some lower stakes?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's something to think about. JD, how about you? Favorite Suspense storyline of all or some time?
Of all time, I'd have to go with Willow's storyline in Buffy. Just like as directly after Tara's stint on the show, with her battle, like with Willow's own internal battle of good and evil, and where she was going to end up with that. But as far as like broad spectrum suspense goes, I have to say Supernatural, probably because that's what I'm like knee deep in the middle of right now. I love that, like Jay Marshall was saying, they keep fucking it up because they keep thinking they can handle it, and it just gets worse and worse. Like you literally let Lucifer out into the world and you still think that you can handle everything, and it just keeps getting worse. At some point you've got to ask for help, and they never do. And it's so interesting to just see how deeply they can dig themselves in. So, and I know that the show just ended, and I'm getting towards the final seasons, and so I'm really interested to see just how bad it's gonna get, at the end.
All right, thank you, Charlotte. How about you?
I think I've brought this movie up a couple times in different panels. It's Silence of the Lambs, of course. I love that movie.
Yes.
The book. And I like the whole Hannibal series and anything related to that, really. And I love Clarice Starling and Jodie Foster. Oh my God. But yeah, I like that's another one where it's the dread. It's kind of throws it in your face and then it backs up and then it gets worse and worse. And,
my favorite part of that movie is where she's standing at the door and they're delivering flowers to the
FBI is bringing the flowers. Yeah.
It's like I remember how I felt the first time I saw it, and I still kind of feel that way every single time. And
yeah,
tells you
that opens the door and you're like, no. I love that.
Allie Valley, bring us home. Your favorite suspense storyline of all time or sometime, and why?
Of all time, probably has to be The Godfather. I mean, Mario Puzo wrote, that was just a masterful. I mean, the book is actually the first and second part of the movies. It's that one book, but it was just he was a master chess player in that, and it just was a wonderful storyline. It just really was.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Well, I want to thank all of you wonderful panelists. We actually have 1 minute. So if you just want to go around and tell what your current book is, and if you're working on something new, what the title of that is, without any further description, I'm going to start with Genevieve.
Okay. My latest book is Thor, Daughter of Asgard, a fun poly romance. And my next book is a Fae Tale.
Excellent. Okay, Jonathan.
Yes, the Dubious Gift of Dragon Blood is out right now, and I'm just starting to write a novella, which is part of a 3-novella thing that hasn't officially been announced by Bold Strokes yet, but will be soon, I hope.
Awesome. Okay, JD, A Far Better Thing is your current book.
Thank you for that, Carsen. I appreciate that. Far Better Thing is out in February, and I guess so I don't get kidnapped and tortured. My very next book will be called Redemption.
Excellent. Charlotte?
So From the Woods is the December release, and my upcoming romance is The Wedding Setup.
Oh, that sounds intriguing. Allie Valley?
So the Devil Incarnate comes out next month, and then after that is A Woman to Treasure.
Oh, that's
Treasure.
Morocco, right?
Aw.
Morocco. So I can write off my vacation.
Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you, Carsen. Thanks,
Thanks,
Leah.
Carson. Thanks, everyone.